What appeared routine proved strategically calculated across Russia's most protected inland waterway. Ukrainian intelligence subsequently verified the cargo contained Iranian ship Shahed, drone components and munitions, essential supplies for Russia's extended strike operations. Moscow viewed this transport as absolutely secure, considering who would risk targeting the vessel, navigating hundreds of kilometers within Russian sovereign territory, in waters bordered exclusively by allies or neutral states. Ukraine, however, had different strategic intentions. Unknown to the crew, hundreds of miles distant, Ukrainian operators were monitoring the vessel's deliberate movement across the Caspian. Meanwhile, above, a Ukrainian extended-range strike drone was cutting through darkness. At minimal altitude, radar signature reduced, engines calibrated for stealth. This represented more than reconnaissance. It constituted a statement. The drone targeted beyond military installations. It aimed at Russia's strategic assumptions, their belief that Caspian waters remained inviolable. For years, Moscow had characterized the Caspian as an internal sanctuary, immune to Western weaponry and Ukrainian tactical innovation. The reasoning seemed sound, completely landlocked, distant from active combat zones, and extensively covered by Russian air defense systems. Yet at 4:17 that morning, this assumption crumbled. Within minutes, flames consumed the deck of the Port Olvia 4, black smoke spiraling into dawn. For Russia's Navy, this exceeded mere tactical setback. This represented strategic vulnerability exposed. If Ukraine could strike here, deep within Caspian waters, then no location remained secure. At 4:25, just 8 minutes after Port Olvia departed its berth, Ukrainian controllers issued the authorization. Somewhere far beyond the Caspian Basin, a long-range strike drone, its trajectory precisely pre-programmed, dropped to ground, following altitude, following terrain and water contours beneath radar coverage. The drone had successfully traversed hundreds of kilometers through Russian airspace undetected. Now it initiated its terminal attack sequence. The drone maintained just meters above water level, radar returned barely distinguishable from wildlife. Russia's sophisticated inland defense networks, configured for high-altitude targets, failed detection. Operators in Astrakhan maintained outward surveillance, monitoring for ballistic trajectories or conventional aircraft, not low-velocity penetrators, carrying compact but devastating warheads. When impact occurred, it achieved surgical precision. The drone penetrated the starboard hull, just forward of the command structure. The warhead exploded within the cargo compartment where wooden containers filled with Iranian-supplied drone power plants and ordnance were densely packed. The consequences proved devastating. By 4:35 that morning, the vessel burned completely from bow to stern. Dense smoke and intense flames transformed the pre-dawn waters into a maritime inferno. Emergency communications were desperate but disorganized. Russian harbor authorities initially rejected reports as operationally impossible. Ukrainian drone here within Caspian waters, inconceivable. Yet it proved entirely feasible. The assault on Port Olvia 4 occurred within broader strategic context. To comprehend why Ukraine would risk striking so deeply within Russian sovereign territory requires understanding the Caspian Sea and why Moscow considered it strategically inviolate. Geographically, the Caspian resembles an enormous inland lake, isolated from global maritime networks. No access to NATO-controlled waters. No Ukrainian coastline. Only 5 nations border it: Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Azerbaijan. From Moscow's perspective, this ensured friendly or neutral waters. That perception granted the sea disproportionate strategic value. Astrakhan and the adjacent Port Olvia became critical logistical nodes. Port Olvia 4 transported more than cargo. It carried future offensive capabilities. Each engine aboard represented a Shahed, potentially targeting Ukrainian infrastructure. Each circuit component meant additional nights of air sirens over Kiev. For Ukraine intelligence operations, targeting such vessels transcended symbolism. It constituted direct interdiction of Russia's terror logistics. The geography reinforced Moscow's strategic overconfidence. Unlike Black Sea operations, where Ukrainian maritime drones and Western intelligence provide Kiev operational flexibility, the Caspian appeared beyond Ukrainian reach. Russian commanders avoided resource-intensive escort protocols or layered defensive measures here. Why invest? From their assessment, the Caspian functioned as exclusive territorial waters. That is precisely why the strike mattered profoundly. It shattered not only a ship, but also strategic doctrine. The concept that distance and geography could guarantee absolute safety was proven fundamentally false. If a Ukrainian drone could navigate hundreds of kilometers to blast a cargo ship in Russia's own inland sea, then no port, no refinery, and no logistics hub was beyond reach. For Kiev, it was a message: sanctuaries do not exist. For Moscow, it was a nightmare. The strike on Port Olvia hit harder than any warhead. It struck Russian pride within hours. Russian state media scrambled to control the narrative. First reports were deliberately vague. A fire aboard a civilian vessel in Astrakhan Oblast. Under investigation, no threat to navigation. Officials systematically downplayed the incident, avoiding any mention of drones or sabotage. But in the age of satellite imagery and instant sharing, that kind of spin does not last long. By the next morning, Ukrainian intelligence released overhead images showing the crippled ship lying half-submerged, at its berth smoke stains streaking the deck, and a slick of fuel spreading on the water. Independent satellite providers confirmed the same. The evidence was undeniably clear. This was not an accident. The vessel had been struck decisively and hard. The Russian Ministry of Defense maintained silence, refusing to comment. Instead, pro-Kremlin outlets floated alternative explanations: faulty wiring, an engine room fire, even the idea of crew negligence. International observers quickly picked up the story. Western analysts highlighted the technical leap Ukraine had just demonstrated. Striking in the Caspian was not simply a one-off stunt. It proved that Kiev could build or adapt drones capable of flying extraordinary distances, navigating deep into enemy airspace, and hitting with surgical accuracy. If Ukraine could reach Olvia, what was stopping them from targeting refineries, shipyards, or even naval bases further along the Caspian? For Russia's navy, the implications were chilling. The Caspian flotilla had always been a secondary force, useful for launching cruise missiles during earlier phases of the war, but otherwise considered secure. Now every ship at anchor, every cargo waiting at dockside, was a potential target. Suddenly resources would have to be diverted. Air defense batteries shifted, patrol routes extended, escorts assigned to supply vessels. Logistics became more complex. Overnight, the political reverberations spread beyond Moscow. Tehran was also watching closely. Iran's strategy of quietly feeding Russia with drones relied on the Caspian route being secure. If Ukraine could cut off that lifeline, or even threaten it, Iran's leverage in the conflict would diminish. Reports circulated that Iranian advisors were urging Russia to harden port defenses, fearing further strikes that might sink ships before their cargo ever reached Russian soil. Meanwhile, Ukraine's leadership seized the moment. Officials openly hinted that no Russian port is beyond our reach. It was psychological warfare, as much as it was physical, forcing Russian commanders to rethink what rear area really meant. Kiev's message was blunt: distance does not equal safety. the strike also served another purpose. It emboldened Ukraine's allies. For months, questions had swirled in Western capitals about whether support was making a tangible difference on the battlefield. The smoking hull of Port Olvia 4 was proof that Ukraine could innovate, adapt, and strike asymmetrically, even without a large navy or long-range missile stockpiles. A drone built in workshops and guided by clever operators had just punched through one of Russia's supposed safe zones. The consequences were clear. Russia's logistics chain had just been bloodied. Its myth of sanctuary shattered Ukraine. Ukraine, with one audacious strike, had redrawn the map of vulnerability. This was not just about one ship. It was about rewriting the rules of the war. Geography had always been Russia's ally. Distance, depth, and layered defenses gave Moscow confidence that some areas were beyond Ukraine's reach. Now that assumption is gone. Commanders have to plan as if every ship, every refinery, every logistics hub, even in the heart of Russia, is on the target list. For Kiev, the message is clear. We can reach you anywhere. That is a powerful deterrent and a morale boost for a nation fighting against overwhelming odds. For Moscow, it is a headache that multiplies with every kilometer of coastline and every ship sailing in safe waters. The Port Olvia 4 thought it was safe. It was not. It challenged Ukraine and paid the price.